So, I want to talk about galactic racism and how it has fully influenced our racial divides on planet Earth. So, we're gonna have to go back in history. So this can be a long one, you guys. So stick with me on this one because I'm saying some really important stuff. So, originally, we have lots to believe that the original humans that were on Earth were of darker skin color, African, like what we think of as Africans, right? And we have a lot backing that up, especially old Sumerian writings about the Anunnaki and them coming down. But the Anunnaki referred to the people there as the blackheads. That's what it says on the Sumerian writings. Don't come for me. That's what it says. And they referred to people who had obviously darker skin, right? So originally the people of Earth were darker skinned. Then the Anunnaki came and kind of messed with our genetics, and then different alien races came down and mixed with us and gave a lot of our genetics. So a lot of alien races have lighter skin. Not all of them, but a lot of them. A lot of the ones that came to Earth have lighter skin. So the people who have the most of like Lyran genetics are lighter. They have the most of them. It's just a fact. So for a long time behind the scenes, our planet has been run and controlled by extraterrestrial peoples that have come and controlled things. Like the Anunnaki, there's good factions and bad factions. The bad factions have been in charge for a really long time. And then there's also the Reps, and then the Greys came into the mix. So there has been a lot of galactic influence in all of our world leaders since pretty much written time. And one thing to know is that genetics are considered valuable, and the genetics are pretty much the most valuable thing. So in galactic society, where different genetics give people different abilities and that sort of thing. And so when we see the racial divides where obviously people with lighter skin have been favored over time, that is because of the bad galactics that have been running us. They have a preference for the genetics, the people with the most alien genetics, because they just value those genetics for some reason. I don't quite know their reasons, but especially when it comes to the time of Hitler and the whole Aryan race thing, and it didn't make sense because like Hitler had like some Jewish ancestry. It didn't make sense. That's because he was working with the Reps. The Nazis were fully in cahoots with the Reps, and they were valuing people with the most Lyran genetics because they wanted to use them. So everyone that didn't have Lyran genetics were, disposable for their reasons, but they're really valuing that the whole thing of the Nazis and the Aryan race, they were valuing certain people with Lyran genetics. That's really what that whole thing was about. Also, these bad powers that be, they purposely like to start wars because it gets them more control, it gets them more resources, it gets them more money. Pretty much everyone at the top wars just end up making them all richer and have more assets and give them more power. And that's all they've been looking for. And they love to pit us against each other because they don't care about us, really. So people who kind of dog the Starseed community and say like, oh, all these Nordic aliens, they're all white, and so, they're superior, whatever. They're not understanding that all of our racial issues actually come down to these galactic influences who were preferring certain genetics over others. They were preferring the people who had more of the alien genetics. And I'm not saying, because there's been so much mixing, almost every human on Earth has alien genetics, obviously, but lighter people who look more like the Lyrans have more of their genetics. It's just a thing. They just do. So the Starseed movement is not racist. There's a lot of people out there who are trying to discredit the information that's coming through from people who are channeling, from people who are connected to their galactic guides, bringing information, because the powers that be, the baddies that have been in charge, don't want this information coming through, so they're very smart and they start planting seeds like to get people riled up, being like, oh, it's racist, and oh, it's this, because they're trying to just demonize and dog the information coming through. But it's very hard to discredit this phenomenon because, like, I'll give an example for myself. I didn't look at the Starseed thing and I was like, oh god, I just want to be so different, and man, I just want to believe I'm from another planet. I swear that is not what happened. I wasn't trying to be super different and have a lot of people in my life think I'm super weird and alienate myself. I didn't want that. It wasn't like, oh, that sounds so cool, let me join that. No. 15 years ago, I was meditating on my bed and I was getting frustrated because my guides have been talking to me, but I hadn't met them and I was getting frustrated. And I finally sat on my bed and I was like, hey, I'm going to sit here and meditate until y'all introduce yourselves. And then I meditated and I meditated for a very long time. And all of a sudden, I was in a different room that I've come to find out now was a really big ship. I was in this huge, huge room, like a dome room, but it was like a football field size. It was huge. And I was all of a sudden I was in a different room. I was on my bed meditating, then I was standing in a different room. And I was there. I was in a different room. And I believe I was pulled out of body, but I was in a different room. And this 6 foot tall blonde woman with blonde hair down to here in a blue outfit walks up to me and goes, hi, I'm Reyna, and puts her hand out for me to shake. And I was so freaked out, I jumped away from her and I was back on my bed. And for the life of me, this was 15 years ago, by the way, I was in college. And for the life of me, I was freaked out, for one, that had never happened to me. And I was like, why would my spirit guide be a tall, blonde, supermodel? Why? I'd never heard of Pleiadians, ever. I'd never heard of them. And then after that, I realized that my spirit guide who'd been speaking to me was her. And so she started speaking to me and she started telling me things about us. She told me specifically where we're from. We're from this planet called Era. I got past life memories that came back. So anyway, I'm sure you guys for you who followed me and heard the story, I'm sorry, but for people who think the Starseed thing is crazy, or people are just, trying to be weird and trying to be different and want to believe we're from other planets, yes, it sounds preposterous. It does. But I met a Pleiadian when I didn't know what they looked like. I'd never heard of them. 15 years ago, nobody was talking about the Pleiadians except for fringe people at UFO conferences, but that wasn't nearly as accessible and mainstream as it is now. I didn't choose this. I didn't just pick this and think it was cool. It was thrust upon me, and it's just a truth I can't deny, And there's nothing, it's not an agenda, it's not racist. It's crazy to believe if you're not familiar with it, but I met a Pleiadian, and we're from a different planet, and I'm here now, but I just get really frustrated, and I know a lot of my people who follow me are like, how do you deal with the haters and stuff and the Starseed stuff? And I'm like, to be fair, there's a lot of weirdos, crazy people. Just I don't listen to every Starseed, and I'm like, yeah, that resonates. Sometimes it doesn't resonate. Sometimes I'm like, you sound a little I don't get it. And that's fine, and we're all allowed to have different opinions. And I mean, if the Christians can believe what they believe, resurrection, virgin birth, why can't the Starseeds believe what they want to believe? Especially when a lot of us have had such real, valid experiences that have created our understanding that we've all kind of pieced together, because this is, it's more of a current thing. And it's not just me. There's so many other people who, I watched this talk of this lady who's just a banker, a pretty normie banker chick. And then she just started getting downloads of her past lives on a different planet. And she was like me, never heard of this, never thought about this, was just trying to live her normal life. And there's just so much of that coming in that's just so undeniable that it frustrates me to no end that people immediately want to shut it down with the buzzwords, saying because you can frame anything a certain way. You'd be like, oh, the Nordic, these blonde aliens are coming. It's racist. It's not. You could frame anything you wanted with the perspective you want to have, but people need to be more open-minded. People need to listen to these real stories. People need to have an open dialogue. But yeah, I guess that's my little mini rant for the day.